It is the 200 level. Mike Carpenter in the basement studio on a Saturday morning. And usually this will be Sunday mornings after Illinois plays on Saturday, but not on Labor Day weekend. Illinois gets things kicked off on a Friday evening, a glorious Friday evening in Champaign to the tune of a 52-3 blowout victory over Western Illinois. And it's not like that's a surprise necessarily, because I think we all expected, and Vegas did as well, a pretty substantial margin of victory. But I think as far as first games go, there are a lot of positive takeaways while still retaining a little bit of what can they improve upon. And from a coaching perspective, I'd imagine that this is going to provide Brett and the rest of the guys a lot of fodder as they go into a much more important game week with a game at Duke coming up. And we'll talk about that a little bit today and a little bit more in the middle of the week. But as far as openers are concerned, I recall distinctly back in 2007, and this was not an opener, but this was a game against Western Illinois in the Rose Bowl season. And I'm pretty sure that Illinois won 17-3 or something like that. So it was funny to me. And I texted Trevor and Isaac when Western got, I think, 2 first downs on their opening drive. And I had joked with both of them that if Aaron Henry's defense gave up a score on the opening drive, I wanted to see Trevor's face, knowing how just filled with rage it would be if that were to happen. It didn't, so all good. But the defense settled in nicely after that. They gave up less than 200 yards. We'll talk about individual performances, and there's one guy that stood out, not in a good way on defense, but I think I come away most impressed by how they looked on that side of the ball. And that's to say nothing of the 52 points you scored, 45 of those on offense, and then one of them, finally, the streak is over, and I know Jeremy and Joey from Illini Inquirer were very happy about this. This was one of their predictions, I'm pretty sure, that Hank Beatty would get a return touchdown this year. He does it in game 1. And Hank Beatty, the downstate kid with a massive performance, and one that I think is very encouraging if you're an Illini fan looking for who is a potential go-to guy for Luke Altmyer. And that's not to say that Hank Beatty is going to be a 1,000-yard receiver this year, but I do think he's going to remain through the rest of the regular season one of the primary targets for Luke, because he seems very, very comfortable with him. Hank has a way of getting open. He's shifty in open field space, and that showed last night against, not great competition, but you got to think early on Luke is going to be leaning on what he knows, and he definitely knows Hank. I was surprised at the lack of targets for Colin Dixon, though he had some great downfield blocks, as you would expect. And then Justin Bowick, a nice surprise, I guess, because we just didn't hear much during training camp. But I know that, when they acquired him, the idea was he would be a big play threat, and that turned out to be true yesterday. So if I were to zoom out, which we often do here on the 200 level, and take a look at game 1 and the game day experience as a whole, and I want to start with that. I compare it even to a calendar year ago when Illinois played Eastern on a Thursday night. So I'm pretty sure this wasn't a leap year, was it? So, I think it is a full calendar year removed from that Eastern game to where we were on Friday night. And to compare and contrast Lot 31, the stands themselves, the overall energy, it was night and day. And that's in one single year. Now, of course, this has been a 5-year thing that Brett Bielema has been running here at Illinois to get them back into not just a position of relevance, but potential top 10 conversations. And we'll get to that when we get there. But I think what last night showed was that by just fielding a good product, Illini fans are there. Illini football fans are there. It is a destination. And even as I got out, because I'll be fully transparent, I wanted to stay in the lots for much of the game because of fatigue from the night before. Went to an Oasis show in Chicago, which was one of the most incredible concert experiences I've been to. So I was slap happy and exhausted and watched much of the game from the confines of Lot 31 and seeing that even during the game, there's just a crowd of people just kind of hanging out and enjoying being there. And I thought to myself, this is nice, which I know that sounds very general. Like, wow, what great analysis, Carp. This is nice. Nice in that Illinois always had the infrastructure and the layout to have a truly awesome game day experience. And even in the leanest of years, there were the loyalist of fans that would continue to show up and show out. Now, with the stadium itself, maybe you'd get 35,000 people in there when things were really bad. Last night, 56,000, I think, was the count. The stands themselves looked very full. They got full midway through the first quarter or so. But to me, it's like we had all the necessary ingredients all this time for Illinois football to be a particularly unique and awesome game day experience. Having been to Michigan and Iowa, Wisconsin, those are great campuses in their own right. But the tailgate scene itself is very sprawling. And you could be a 20-plus minute walk from the stadium in some neighborhood grass lot. And that's fun and all. But the concentrated ability to pack all these fans and their vans and their trucks and their converted ambulances and RVs and turn it into the festive atmosphere it is, like that was all there. And it just took getting a relevant to potentially very good program on the field for that to go next level. To see the turnout and the excitement last night for a game against an FCS opponent where the outcome was never in doubt and you don't necessarily learn much about your team was very cool. It showed that we've had it all along, right? It just took a guy like Brett Bielema to kind of shake us out of our doldrums and get us particularly excited about going even to a Western Illinois tailgate. So I wanted to start there and just, I guess, coming from a place of gratitude, if you will. I mean, the fact that we are in a place that is such a far cry from where we were, 10, 11 years ago. Into the Beckman, the Bill Cubitt year, the entire Levy experience, which was just a miserable experience. And I think it's only fair for Illini fans, if we can be greedy for a second, because we haven't had a lot of opportunities to do that for football. It is okay to say, yeah, this is nice. Like we deserve this. We deserve to have all the bells and whistles that other football programs do in our very own backyard here in Champaign. I'm going to go, after this is over, on a run. And often after game days, especially Sundays usually, my Sunday morning pre-Bears run is usually back around the stadium, especially if it was after a home game. And there's just something about being around there afterwards, knowing that, 24 hours earlier, this was a hotbed of activity. It feels that much better after a win. And God dang, if the weather, not that I want to turn this into talking about the weather, because I know that can be very, very boring and very Midwestern of me. But if it wasn't the most perfect night, weather-wise, every ingredient was there, except for the fact it wasn't on a Saturday. But I'll be honest about this. For a game like Western, it worked out okay, because now we get all of Saturday to just bask in the win. Not momentous by any means, but a win nonetheless, and watch all the other games and just relax. We got a 1-0 football team. They're going to probably remain at 12 in the rankings. Not a whole lot of shakeup, I would imagine, in the top 12. And we get to prep now for a game that has a lot of implications, and we will learn a lot. Did we learn much against Western? We'll talk about what we did. And do you feel better or worse about the team? We'll talk about that as well. But it has begun. All the talk in the months leading up to it, we don't have to make predictions anymore other than a game-by-game basis. We can let this thing play out. We can ride this wave for the next 3 months, and hopefully on the other side of it, we can look back at that Western game as just that was an indication of where this team was going. And at 10-2, they're going to do this. They're going to host a CFP game, or maybe they make it to Indianapolis for the Big Ten title game. Regardless, a very good start to the season from an on-field and off-field perspective, and a positive vibe that we don't normally have this early on. So let's get to all this. For those that are joining us here on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, appreciate it. Illini Brick Roll, also at Oasis. I need to talk a bit about that because it was something else. So we're going to get to all that, but please load it up with comments, whether you're on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook. I have a feed here where I can display them, kind of like what Jeremy and Joey were doing. They have the same software called StreamYard. So we can make this. Look at this. We got a full production. I got a little banner down here with all the information, like you can buy the book, got the sponsors and all that. Speaking of which, I just want to remind you that we are sponsored by Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign, steak, seafood, and spirits. I just had a buddy who last night went to Hamilton Walkers with his wife to celebrate their anniversary. He texted us about a week before the game and said, guys, I won't be at the first one anniversary. Hey, all good, man. It's Western Illinois. And I felt that much better knowing they actually went to the best restaurant in town. Excuse my voice today, by the way. And he even sent a picture to the thread with the patented Hamilton Walker's Old Fashioned. So I was happy to be in Lot 31 and happy to be at the game, but if I could have chosen another place to be, it would have been there, having a nice big steak and an old-fashioned family style side of their French fries or steak fries, which have this great crispness to them. I don't know how they fry it, where it's just got the crisp outside and just the absolutely just steaming potato insides. Does that sound appetizing? I could do a little bit better at this culinary thing. Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. Also, State Farm agent Brian Hansen online at brianismyguy.com for life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it. Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call today at 217-841-4728. And believe it or not, you might want to get that furnace check scheduled. It is cool out there. It's about 60 degrees right now. It won't be that long before you have the low 40s and the upper 30s. And that furnace will need to kick on if you don't want to freeze. We have ours scheduled here for the next month. So Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, 217-841-4728. And finally, Owen Builders, LLC. Online at owenbuildersllc.com. Check out a gallery of their work and get a free quote while you're there at owenbuildersllc.com. Appreciate Luke and his staff. One thing that they do, contractors often do great work, right? But it's really the communication, how quickly Luke and the staff get back to you and work with you through their projects, whatever that may be. owenbuildersllc.com. All right. Hello to everybody on this Saturday morning. We're going to get done before Ohio State, Texas, and all the action today. Not a lot of great games in the Big Ten. Not maybe the most promising start for the Big Ten if we're really looking at how bad Wisconsin and Rutgers looked. Duke, that was a game I did not get to watch any of it because I was at Oasis. We'll get to that in a second. But, yeah, Trevor said they were a bit underwhelming in the first half. It was 10-10. Then they came out, blew the doors off Elon in the second half. And that's a game that you got to win. I think you should win. I think you're better than them. And we'll talk more about that Wednesday. But real quick, why the voice is like it is today. A little bit worse for wear. Thursday night, Oasis in Chicago was able to go with literally a group of 12 friends. And we had these tickets for 10 months. All of us got online trying to secure these things. I've never been in a Ticketmaster queue that was as insane as this. Unfortunately, 3 friends got sets of 4. And that was enough to cover all of us. So for those that don't know Oasis, huge British rock band that were away for 16 years because the brothers, the lead singer and guitarist, hated each other, like just notoriously, legendarily hated each other. Well, they reunited, and this is a huge deal. And their songs, which are so 90s, Oasis is such a 90s band, have somehow regained relevance. And I think it's because they are stadium anthems. They're so easy to sing along with. And on top of that, part of the excitement of an Oasis show is that you are essentially transported to an English soccer match or European soccer match. And there was a moment 6 songs in, and we were on the field about the 50-yard line. There was a moment 6 songs in, a song called Cigarettes and Alcohol. And Liam, who is just not short on charisma, one of the best frontmen I've ever seen. And he doesn't do a lot. He's not like running around or anything. He's just got presence to spare. He tells the crowd to do this thing called the Poznan, which is at European soccer matches, or maybe in South America too, like Argentina, I'm not sure. You turn around, you put your arms around the people next to you, and you jump up and down. Crowd does this during Cigarettes and Alcohol. And Brick Roll, you can let me know in the thread where you were setting and what it looked like. I can tell you from the field, from being in that crush of people, jumping up and down, I've never had a concert moment like that. It was the most potentially cathartic concert I've been to. I can't believe I have a voice because everything I and the rest of the crowd sang was at the top of our lungs. And it was their first American show in 16 years, and they killed it. And all the press after is like, Oasis, finally, after all this time, conquered America. Because they never really did. They weren't playing stadiums. They played UIC Pavilion in 2005 when one of our best friends who was there for the show was there for that. It's like 6,000 people. I don't think they even sold it out. Soldier Field, meanwhile, packed. And I've been to shows at Soldier Field. I've never seen that place like that for a show. It was truly an insane evening. So, Friday, I'm trying to switch into football mode, and it's not easy. I got to be honest. But, yeah, Brick Roll, let me know what you were thinking you were up in 338. It felt like Madison on steroids during Jump Around. The shake was real. Not just, so Brick Roll mentions this. Jump Around is a good comp here. They do that at Madison. You can feel Camp Randall shaking. And I had some people in the 100s that said they could feel the 100 level shaking at Soldier Field during that. Just insane. So I would say, hey, next time you can go see Oasis. It's not an easy ticket to get, but it is, and I don't want to be hyperbolic and I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. It's probably the best overall concert experience I've had. And I've seen Paul McCartney, and I've seen U2 at the Sphere. I've seen the Stones a bunch. God knows I've seen Dave Matthews Band, and I kind of put them over here with my 96 shows or 97, whatever it is now. No, it was that good. So wake up Friday morning and get breakfast at 11 City Diner. We're all a bit bleary-eyed. Adrenaline is still coursing through our veins, and make the trip back to get to the lots in time about 2 o'clock. Again, a perfect day. Settle in for the game. And I think there's a few things that we can talk about today. And starting off with the macro observation that this team, I think, has the opportunity to be very, very, very good. And the number 12 ranking would certainly indicate that I'm not alone and you're not alone in thinking that. But I'm going to start extremely macro and not exactly the most analytical. They just looked good. And here's what I mean by that. They looked good. They looked big. They looked fast. They looked like they had playmakers. Does it help that on the other side it's Western? And just by comparison, you're going to look bigger and better than them? Of course. There's no doubt about that. But I looked at, let's say, the defensive line. And they just looked really good throughout the game. Of course, anchored by Gabe Jacas, who could be a superstar this year. He could be a legit superstar and a game wrecker, as he was against Michigan last year and to an extent South Carolina. He could do that more consistently this year. And then that just frees up all the other guys who are bigger and are stronger than before on that defensive front to go do their thing. I thought the linebackers looked good, man. It was really good to see Rosiak back out there, and he seemed fleet of foot. There's no lingering effects, it appears, from his injury last year. And you see guys like Malachi Hood getting a bunch of tick as well. Before I forget, Durjai from Florida State on the defensive line. It looked, he had an injury early, but he was playing throughout the rest of the game. He looked good. Don't know if I really picked up a whole lot on Kurt Neal on the D line, but it just seemed like as a collective, General Hunt had a play or two. It seemed as a collective they looked big and strong, and they mauled that offensive line for Western like you should if you have a good power forward defensive line. That was a lot of questions. I think we'll see, of course, next week when Duke, who has the ability to run the ball, goes off against you. I think the good news is that Menza, their quarterback, at least statistically, was not running it a whole lot against their opponent, Elon. So is that D-line going to have to do much contain, or can they just kind of fill in the gaps, do what they have to do against the run, get some pressure on the pass? We'll see Saturday, a week from today. But I thought the D-line looked good. I thought that the linebackers looked good. I thought that the secondary, they probably weren't tested very much. But like a Matthew Bailey, if he doesn't just look like a superstar for whatever that accounts for, when the games are actually played, he just looks like an imposing figure out there. The dude is shaped like a freaking superhero. And it was really cool to just watch him kind of prowling the middle of the field. Miles Scott playing center field. Yeah, there was one blemish we can talk about, and that was Caleb Patterson, who did not have a good game. The two big moments for Western essentially were against him. One of them was just bad coverage. It's like a little hitch and go for Western, or he kind of slipped, but they got a deep pass over Patterson once. And then there was a play in the late third quarter, I believe it was, when they found a guy for what we thought was a touchdown when it probably should have been a pick by Patterson. He had plenty of time to adjust to that. A great play by the wide receiver, but that's one you got to make. Torrey Cox at Nebraska, it was not. But can he fix that? Yes. If you're going to have blemishes, let it be week 1 against Western. But I think that there is a formula here for the defense as a whole to be like top 6 in the Big Ten good, top 3rd, to vault from that middle of the pack that they were last year to top 3rd. And if, for lack of sounding like I've never watched football in my life, they just looked big and strong and fast. And they kept rotating guys in and out, which we assumed in the first game. But I think that there are going to be wider rotations that allows you to stay fresher as the game goes on. One thing I talked about with Trevor and not with Isaac maybe, but I think with Trevor and then through the Lon and Jeremy podcast was I think there's a formula here for the defense to be better because of the run offense. And let's switch to the offense here. I thought that the rushing offense looked very good. And the offensive line seemed to block that well, and your 3 running backs all had their moments. Caden, I think, is just all reliable when he's out there. And if he stays healthy this year, there's nothing to say that he won't get 5-6 yards a carry. He's that kind of dude. He's just super reliable, and he will not get negative yards. It seemed like every time he's getting an extra 2-3 yards after contact. You cannot bring him down. Aiden Lawfrey is a guy that is a home run threat. And we saw that when he broke through late in the game to help get you that. I think that was the final score. So Khalil Valentine, to me, looked bigger. He was like a little skinny guy last year that had some bursts, but he did look bigger. And I didn't feel like when I would see him in the backfield compared to an Aiden Lawfrey that there was a substantial drop-off in size or anything. Caden Fagan, on the other hand, just looks like like if Lawrence Taylor were a running back. So before I get to Luke and the rest of the passing game, I want to start with this connection that I think might exist, that I think could really bode well for this team. If they run the ball well, they keep the ball longer, and they keep the defense off the field. And it's not this idea of keep the defense off the field because they aren't capable. I think even last year, for the most part, that was a capable defense that was maybe sometimes bend, not break, but they got their job done more often than not. I think this defense has the potential to be very good. And if they're only out on the field, let's say 27 minutes a game, as opposed to 33, then come fourth quarter, you can really defensively attack and use that third down package with Malachi Hood, who got, again, a lot of tick. And I need to listen to Jeremy and Joey, and maybe we'll have a better idea Monday after PFF grades come out and snap counts and all that, how much he was out there. But he just seemed to be very present, and that speed really seemed to pop on the screen. I just feel like what we saw in November last year, and there were not always great moments defensively last year, but in that last month, but I think that third down package that you started to see more and more often, it seemed to open something for Aaron Henry from a play calling perspective that I think could be huge for this team, because depth might be a bigger strength for that defense than individual performers. There's a Gabe Jacas and there's a Xavier Scott and a Matthew Bailey, and those guys are dudes. We know that. But the rest of the defense, and even the ones, are probably anywhere between good and pretty darn good, which is to say that other than Jacas, Matthew Bailey, is Xavier Scott, I don't know if they're stars defensively, but I do think that your 2s and 3s are all pretty darn capable as well. This might be a case where quantity equals quality. And by keeping them fresh with rotations and with the offense helping out by keeping the ball longer with that run game, it seems like that's a path for this team. Additionally, how the offense can help out. Luke Altmyer was very efficient yesterday. We are going to get to a major concern, and there is a troubling thing, a trend with Luke. But when he's throwing the ball, he is efficient. Often you would think that a high-octane passing offense would mean that your time of possession is naturally going to go down. And Illinois can play with pace. But I think that what we saw yesterday, and I know it was a vanilla game plan, was you saw Barry Lunney really already in tune with how to sustain drives, mixing the pass and the run. And if you are completing 70+% of your passes, which I don't know if that's going to be a season-long thing for Luke, but I do think certainly over 60. And I think that he can challenge the efficiency that Tommy DeVito had, along with having a bit more big play potential than he did in 2022. That right there is an offense that cumulatively, between the run and the pass, can just keep the opposing defense on the field. And then that offensive line, which I know Bielema was not happy with for the first half performance and parts of that game, and why the ones played as long as they did. To my chagrin, as I saw Luke come out in the fourth quarter, but in fairness, they just ran it and ran it and ran it and ran it, and maybe two passes in there. One in which Luke took a hit. We'll get to that. But it occurred to me, keeping your defense fresh with offensive efficiency, that's one thing. Wearing down the opposing defensive line, that is another thing. And what it takes me back to is the 2001 Chicago Bears, a team that was not nearly as good as their 13-3 record. But hey, on the other hand, you are what your record says you are. They were 13-3, and here's a big reason why. Anthony Thomas had a great rookie season behind a really good offensive line. The Bears' defense was also very good that year, very opportunistic, maybe a bit luckier than some of the Lovie Smith defenses. But the mix of run the ball well, good defense, and then in the fourth quarter, that Bears offensive line and Anthony Thomas, A-Train, would wear down the opponent. And it occurred to me as I saw Caden Fagan more and more in the third quarter and into the fourth, getting him reps. What if the formula here is a very efficient offense that can go get you 27, 28 points a game? But most importantly, perhaps, is in the third and fourth quarter, they wear down that opposing defensive line and they control the ball and they control the clock that much more. Yes, resulting in points. So this isn't some game manager. Luke Altmyer is more than a game manager. He's a very good quarterback. He can make throws when you need him to. But I think this team's going to rely on that run. Not in a way of necessity, but by design. That you get in the fourth quarter, you're up 10 points, your ball, okay, your turn, Caden. You're going to put this game on ice. The opposing defensive line is one up against J.C. Davis and Melvin Priestley, who looks to be healthy, which, thank goodness for that. And now they get some depth. You get a Schuster in there to spell some guys. You get Hansen, who played some guard yesterday. And now you're winning in the trenches, I guess is my larger point here. You have the ability this year on both sides to potentially win in the trenches. And if that is the case, and you have a quarterback like Luke Altmyer, and you have running backs like you do, and you have a game wrecker and a Gabe Jacas, a guy that can take a major step like a Matthew Bailey, and damned if he didn't look the part yesterday, and Xavier Scott shutting down whoever he's on. Xavier Scott had one tackle yesterday, and I thought, well, how's that? And it's like, well, probably because they just didn't even bother with his side of the field. I like that formula. I think that there's something to it that is very reminiscent of Bielema at Wisconsin, where he probably had good quarterbacks. I don't know if he had a quarterback as talented as Luke Altmyer, but whatever guy was behind center, that was an efficient offense that ran the ball very well. And those defenses, I'm sure some of them were statistically elite, but it's a lot easier to be an elite defense if you're only on the field 25 minutes a game and you have 2s and 3s that can come in and not lose a step or not lose much of a step. What if, encouragingly here, we're seeing the long-term Bielema playbook really coming into fruition in year 5? I still, as much as I enjoyed last year's team, and I'll be honest, it was my favorite Illini football season top to bottom because it was just a fun wave from the start with very little in the way of, oh, God, we're being Illinois football again. It was just refreshing in so many ways. But I felt like they were ahead of schedule. And that's not a slight against them. That's actually a credit to them for overachieving. An 8-win team, perhaps, wins 10. Okay, well, ahead of schedule. Now, what if this was the year that Bielema, internally at least, kind of circled in his mind as, well, this is when my vision really gets fleshed out. When all this depth that we've spent 5 years building helps us take that next step. If that is the case, and you have this schedule, then I start thinking like Lon talked about in our last podcast, that I'm counting to 10. We got 1. Great, as you should. 9 more to make the college football playoff, because a 10-2 Big Ten team is making the college football playoff. Okay, great. Let's count. I don't think that's outlandish. If everything that I outlined there, really good run game, efficient offense, quarterback that can sustain drives, a defense that has more depth and can rotate guys out, keeping them fresh, and they're on the field less anyway. I just like that. And they even flashed it, and I think it was worth flashing on the screen yesterday, and I think you'll get it probably almost every game that you watch Illinois this year. The only FBS team to enter a 3rd straight season with their head coach, offensive coordinator, D coordinator, and quarterback the same. That counts not just for something, but for a ton, I would imagine. That is, in this day and age of college football, that doesn't happen. So I mentioned earlier, it's okay to get greedy sometimes, and I try to pick my spots. I do caution just the nature of the game of football and Big Ten football, that if we go 8-4, I don't want people to be overly disappointed. If they go 7-5, I think that's totally fine. This team should be better than that. But if they go 8-4, I'm not going to sit here and say, darn it. Would I allow mild disappointment to creep in? Of course, because opportunities like this maybe won't present themselves a whole lot. So there is the notion that, you got to make hay with it. But I do know this. That looks like a good team over there. That does. And this looks like a manageable schedule. Tough, but manageable. And you feel like you got a coach that has complete control over everything. I mean, think about the way, if you watch the press conference, Bielema talked last night. He said, I liked what I saw overall, but he was very tempered. And to me, it sounded like a coach who is super comfortable with where his team is at, knowing they have areas to improve, but also not going overly negative. And what I mean by that is, he could have really upped the ante yesterday with the way the first half ended. And he did mention that the first half drive by the offense to end it was bad. They wanted to double dip. But if you listen to how he talked about it, it was very businesslike. Well, we got to clean that up. Okay, great. Clean it up. All that to say that if I would imagine, at least, if there was some sort of lingering doubt in his mind or concern that maybe this team wasn't quite as good as he had hoped, that you would have sensed a little bit more, for lack of a better word, anxiety in his voice, or a little bit more oomph when he was talking about that. And instead, it just seemed very tempered, like, we're going to look at the tape, we're going to coach him up, we're going to fix it. Great, done. He has built up enough cachet with me that I would believe that the things that we saw yesterday that were troubling can, in fact, be corrected. One of those things, Luke, I love you. Get rid of the damn ball and slide legs first. The hit he took, which probably should have been targeting, that can't happen. You just don't take those. There was a sack later where all he had to do was just toss it out of bounds. Didn't do it. He is such a good decision maker when it comes to throwing the ball. But when that clock gets to the 3rd second or the 4th second, good as the offensive line is, eventually you are going to start getting some pressure. And when Western Illinois can sack him 3 times and pressure him a couple others, I'm asking myself, is this an offensive line issue? But most of those plays were going on and on and on. And I'm thinking, well, damn, man, look, get rid of it. So there will be my one bit of trepidation going into Duke. Not one, the biggest. They have a pretty good defensive line. So if I'm Manny Diaz, I'm just being aggressive as hell and trying to knock Luke around. Luke can take a hit. He can take a hit, right? So it's not that, but I think that hitting him and hitting him early would speed up that clock. That's the only thing it would serve to do, is speed up the clock for Luke when maybe that's not, you want it to speed up organically, not because he fears getting drilled. And that's the thing that could lead to mistakes next week. If I'm Barry Lunny, I would imagine that this week you're thinking, okay, how do we get the ball out quickly? And there were some of those yesterday, like the 21 passes Luke had, and he completed 17 of them. It was so efficient because he was most of the time getting the ball out quick. I think it was maybe the plays where they were trying to take their shots that Luke thought, it's Western Illinois' line. I got all the time in the world. And that's just not the case. Even against an FCS team, eventually they'll find their way to you. And I just think that Barry Lunny will likely continue to have quick hitters, easy passes. Hank Beatty, I think, will be a focal point again next week. Why? Because he gets to a spot quick, and even that's a 5 little inside slant. If he's got a little bit of space, he can turn that 5 to 7 or 8. Great. And you got a tall guy like Boaco. I know it was a home run threat yesterday, but man, just do a quick little out with him. Make him go up and get it. Just get rid of that ball quick against Duke and run the ball against Duke. And I think they can do both things. And I think they will do both things. But my fear for that game being early on the road is, okay, Luke, those mistakes against Western, please learn from them, because a repeat of that, getting sacked 3 times, he didn't fumble, but it just feels like that Duke game, you aren't going to win by maybe 3 scores, I don't think, right? I don't think so. You hope to maybe win by 10. You hope to win by a point, of course. I mean, it doesn't really matter the margin, but all things considered, I think Illinois can be a 7 to 10 point better team than Duke. But this is not a neutral field, and this is on the road, and Duke is capable. So the one thing you can't do is be the team that makes enough mistakes to elevate them, Duke that is, to a place where they could beat you. I think if Illinois plays a clean game, they win. I do. And that's, again, not exactly like breaking news, amazing analysis on my part. Good teams that play clean games tend to win. And I think that Duke can have plenty of issues themselves. I'm not all that worried about Menza's 370 yards against Elon, because 1, it's Elon, and 2, why are you having to pass that much against Elon? Oddly enough, they got plenty of rushing yards against Elon too, but that first half was a mess. Jitters figuring each other out, maybe so, but I'm really going to simplify this, and we'll talk more Wednesday about it. Brett Bielema versus Manny Diaz. Brett Bielema year 5, Manny Diaz year 3. It's got to be that simple. You built this over 5 years. You were better than them, so just go do it. But Luke, please don't take 3 sacks. Be quick. Don't put yourself in that offense in a bad position. A couple things here. Let's get to the chat thread, and thank you guys for lining up a little bit. And start with Brick Girl. It is a great day to be in Illini, Brick Girl. We usually win the opening game against bad competition. I don't know the last time Illinois didn't. Toledo was close, though they were not a bad team. They won 9 or 10 that year, I believe. But it is a great day, and now we can just kind of settle back, watch college football. That's pretty good. This is from Peyton. Memorial Stadium had a joyous feel last night. Just a lot of fun with a lot of people. Hell of a turnout. I thought the Friday of Labor Day would actually be a problem when it came to attendance. Not so. I thought Western Illinois, they might draw a few from Macomb, or just Western Illinois grads who live around the state. And I know there were a few of them there. But no, for the most part, this was just a big Illini crowd on a Friday night, on a holiday weekend, electing to be there. So I think that I would agree, Peyton. There was just a sense of joy. And I think where that joy probably comes from is, call it a sense of arrival, which, if Illinois stubs their toe this year, then it won't feel like they arrived last year. But I think that there's this confidence, and it's warranted, that you are in the right hands with this coaching staff, that the program is actually maybe establishing itself here as being pretty good. So we're not used to that. And I think that as people were walking in last night, they're like, this is cool. I'm walking in with a feeling of, I think we have a good football team. And that leads to joy, of course. Brick Girl couldn't make the kick on Friday. Wow, doesn't allow Chicago area teachers. Yeah, it's difficult. So listen, Brick Girl, I took a personal day. It was just one of those things. Yeah, I was not going to mess with that. And that was because I wasn't going to drive back from Oasis afterwards. I mean, if you go to an Oasis show, you aren't exactly in driving condition after. That's not how it works. And then with the game on Friday, it was like, okay, we'll extend the weekend a little bit. This is from Billy. So nice to have a game where we did what we were supposed to do as heavy favorites. Billy, great. Yeah, there was no anxiety watching it. The first two first downs for Western were a slight but man, that defense, and I thought impressively, actually, they adapted. They figured it out. It sounded as if that there was some shiftiness going on with, some pre-snap movement and things going on with Western, and the defense was probably figuring out how to communicate through that, get guys in the right spots. They did not long after that, and they really held their own. Again, a couple of not great plays by Caleb Patterson. Hopefully he gets that fixed. But the good news is you have depth. Like let's say Caleb Patterson continues to have slip-ups. Well, okay, fine. Jaheim Clark's going to get more tick. Or Heckle, who I know the coaching staff loves, and he got quite a bit in the second half. Fine, he plays more. You have options. You don't feel like, oh God, if this guy doesn't work, what are we going to do? So that is pretty nice. A couple more here. This is also from Illini Brick Roll. Having a decent run game isn't just about the yards. I agree it opens up different ways to game plan and be more effective. And to that point, Brick Roll, I think that it's actually remarkable that last year's team went 10-3 with, I don't know, dare I say, inconsistent running game. It depended on the game. If you could, and the opponent, if you could count on the run game to get you 150 yards or whatever it would take to feel comfortable that, if they have to get a first down late in the game, they can do that. If they need to extend a drive at some point, they can do that. There were questions about that last year, certainly 2 years ago. This could be new. We had Chase Brown in 2022. He was an absolute beast, but we've really yet to see a Brett Bielema run game that is, do I say dominant? I know that's a big word, but when you've got all 5 offensive linemen coming back, you saw, as we did last night, some barge formation, and we saw some 2-3 tight end sets. I mean, what the hell? Keep it simple, man. You got the horses back there, and of course, it's all about them staying healthy, but what if? What if instead of the quarterback, who we're all excited about, and I like Luke. I mean, there's not many quarterbacks I would trade for Luke Altmyer. I mean, I'd have to think on that. I know there's the guys that would start for an Ohio State or Georgia or Alabama that are, 5-star of all 5-star quarterbacks, but there's not many I trade for Luke. And then, but I really do think that the path for success for this team last year, it was Luke and Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin making big plays in big games more often than not. And that led you to surprise 10-win season. What if you can take the onus off this good quarterback and just make his job even easier and just run the damn ball? I mean, simple as it sounds, I told Lon in the last podcast, I sometimes like just a good single on offense. And what I mean by that is like a 6-yard run by Fagan. He had a few of those last night. I just thought, I like that. Look at that. That was 6 yards, relatively easy. That'll play, man. And I know that's Western, but you also didn't show a lot. I think that will play this season if they can do that. This is from AO. Speaking of Fagan, still not hitting the hole consistently. Valentine is a stud and should definitely get more snaps. AO, if there's one thing with Fagan that he needs to work on, it appears to be vision and knowing which hole to attack and when, and just going. Because once he gets 3 yards downfield, he's going to rumble for at least 3 more. He's got the size, he's got the speed to do that. But I would agree, just hit the damn hole. The same way Luke, get rid of the ball. It's Caden, hit it, go. But sometimes it's just a matter of him finding that hole. And his vision, I think, is something he's still probably working on. This is from Illini Brick Girl. The officiating crew was atrocious. There was the bad call, offensive pass interference against Bowick in the corner of the end zone that I didn't agree with. But, yeah, they weren't great. There was the targeting that should have been on Luke, and then they didn't for whatever reason. That's officiating. Another thing, and I don't mean to be – I was happy to have Illinois football back, but, the first half ends, and it's 8:15. And I'm like, on what planet should a first half against an FCS school take an hour and 45 minutes? On what planet? And if I see the Limu Emu commercial again, Liberty Mutual, I'm saying this, I guess they'll never be a sponsor. That's why you should go with Brian Hansen, State Farm agent. That freaking emu, get him off my screen. It's not funny. But yet we were pounded with that. And also Botox treatments, which maybe I should look into that. It felt like I was just completely hit over the head with Botox treatments and the emu. All that said, I thought that the Peacock presentation, really good. Phil Simms. And, it's funny. I never liked him in the pregame shows with CBS all that much. Not that I watch a whole lot. And I didn't think he was a good one guy, number one color commentator for CBS. But the guy knows his sports. Maybe not the best voice, but he was actually pretty good to listen to last night because, I don't know, he just kind of calls the game in front of him, and he's not overly emotive or anything. So I just kind of like a steady hand at that color commentary position. That's why it was so cool last year having the CBS guys in. And who would that have been? Danielson and Nestler. And Sims has a little bit of that too. So it was fun to listen, especially the second half when I was watching all of it. And that's your commentator talk, which I don't really normally do. But I thought Peacock was fine, and it's not that expensive. Yes, this is the day and age that we're living in. You got to buy a bunch of different streaming services. But next week is, I believe, on, if someone in the chat thread can remind me, what is it on next week? All in all, guys, that was a good night and a good start. And you won 52-3. You didn't really break much of a sweat. Everyone's healthy, apparently. And how much did you actually show out there? I don't know. Maybe not a lot. And then you get an extra day to prep for Duke. And they had an extra day compared to you by playing Thursday night. So advantage for them. But this early in the season, I don't know if those 24 hours make a huge difference. They've been prepping for Duke all off season. So now that you got the first one out of the way, and you did so relatively smoothly with a ho-hum 52-3 victory, that's fine. I mean, that is a sign of a program that I think this year will beat the teams that are lesser than them, and I think that's a lot of the teams on the schedule. But road games, of course, complicate things. If this were a home game against Duke, I would feel pretty darn good about it. Being a road game, I will say this before we close out. Bielema's teams tend to play very focused, good ball on the road. It's never easy for sure, but I think if you were to compare Illinois' road record to other Big Ten teams, since Bielema's been here, it's been pretty good. And you can go back to his first year at Penn State, at Minnesota. You can go to the year where they made the ReliaQuest Bowl. I mean, they almost beat Michigan at Michigan, a college football playoff team. And they went into Nebraska, and they kind of easily won that game. They smoked Wisconsin at Wisconsin. Should have won in Indiana. All in all, they played pretty well on the road under Brett Bielema. I don't think that'll change. I like the early kickoff, not having to play a night game in a weird environment. I don't know what it's like playing at Duke for a football game. I think hopefully it's early enough where the crowd will be a mere inconvenience. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of Illini fans that travel to it too. So get it done, and we'll talk more about that Wednesday. But this kind of sets the table for take care of business in week 2. And in the meantime, enjoy your Saturday watching college football, which is what we're probably all about to do. It's about time for the Texas-Ohio State kickoff. So thank you all for tuning in. Do me a favor. If you're watching YouTube, on X, on Facebook, and we got about, it looks like about 100 people spread between those. If you could like, subscribe, all that business, the more the merrier. And we'll be doing these podcasts essentially twice a week through football season. Midweek on Wednesdays, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then post-game usually on a Sunday. Now, Duke being as early as it is, we might just hit that up Saturday after that game is over, unless we lose and I'm too peeved. But we'll be available because that's an early game, and I'm not planning on second half podcast for football. That can be a bit long-winded, and I think sometimes it's better to collect your thoughts, come on after and do that, whether it's Saturday if it's an early game or Sundays after you've had a whole 24 hours to digest. But appreciate you watching. Appreciate you listening. Football season has officially started. Thank goodness for that. And before we get out of here, best way you can support us is support our sponsors, Hamilton Walkers, downtown Champaign with steak, seafood, and spirits. They are a 5-star dining experience. Appreciate Nathan and the staff over there for their second year of support. So go ahead, support them, whether it's a date night or whether it's a pregame meal or just going in there for drinks and appetizers, which, man, crab cakes are amazing there. I don't think I've mentioned that before, but crab cakes, a couple cocktails, there you go. But whatever you get, it's going to be amazing, and I can't wait. My wife and I are going to be hitting that up here for our anniversary soon as well. That's Hamilton Walkers. State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. Life, auto, home, business renters, you name it, Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well. And they don't have a stupid emu that they're shoving down your throat. Yeah, there's Jake from State Farm. I get it. Maybe you have your opinions about it, but I know this much. Brian has been our guy, and we really appreciate him and his sponsorship as well. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing. Get your furnace check scheduled at 217-841-4728. That is Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing. And finally, Owen Builders, LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com. For your next home improvement project, check out a gallery of their work and get a free quote online at owenbuildersllc.com. Again, like and subscribe, follow, however you listen to us or watch us. We appreciate you. I'm going to go rest this voice for the rest of the week. Ugh. Oasis was worth it. First football game was worth it. And we will be back with a new and improved, silky smooth voice Wednesday afternoon. In the meantime, everybody, have a great rest of your holiday weekend. And Illinois football is 1-0. It is the 200 level.